I didn't ask to do this.
No, you were asked to do
I
it.
didn't ask to do any of this, especially this. I got roped into becoming a tech support guy for Digitrax just based on enthusiasm and presentation. I have a long background in electronics, a long background in teaching, an even longer background in model railroading. And I started studying DCC long before there was DCC, because there were things that the Army and the Air Force and the Navy were pushing back in the late 70s for energy control systems. And we actually used the same principles as what you have here to put a lot of communication on a very small wire to make things happen globally. But along came Astrac from GE, and then there was CTC 16 and CTC 80, and then CTC 120, and then some other things started to happen. Wangro came along. This is a tribute to NCE. Wangro came along, and that evolved into NCE, North Coast Engineering. Lens created a system over in Europe, which was even simpler on the communications bus, and that evolved into what Digitrax adopted and started working with back in the early 90s. Now, what we're looking at here is either third or fourth generation of products from Digitrax. And I'll just start with the queen of all of them, which is their simplest and easiest. It's a full-blown command station, booster, and throttle all in one, called a DCS-52. It's a starter set, but it is, because everything is cross-compatible and back-compatible, you can use this thing for as long as you have a Digitrax system. You configure it initially as a control system. With a larger system, you reconfigure it as a booster throttle only. And you can continue to use it in a remote location on a railroad. This was also the test bed for the new generation of throttle. And there are two throttles. There's the DT602, and this is another tribute to NCE. You'll notice the shape has changed from the basic block that Digitrax had with their initial throttles to a more hourglass-shaped, friendlier to whole throttle, but it's still a dual throttle. What Digitrax did with this one is go with a color screen for display and a menu-driven background. So instead of having a raft of push buttons, there's a menu with scrolling instructions for selection of whatever you want to do. And it gets really, really complicated, which for guys in our age group can become daunting. That's why I'm here. I'm a technocrat. I'm an instructor. I've done a lot of this. I've done a lot of engineering, and I've built model railroads for a very long time. So I understand the challenges, and that gives me added value as tech support. But anyway, the Zephyr, the DCS-52, was the test bed for these new throttles. And basically what you have with the DT602 is a pair of throttles that run side by side, completely independent. And whichever knob you rotate becomes the active throttle. So you can have more than one train running at the same time. And if you can keep it straight in your head, you can run them on the layout. In addition to that, each throttle has a recall stack. So you can have more than one train running on one throttle. If you're good enough with the recall, you can hit recall, grab another train, set its speed, recall, jump back to the first one, but you can go 8 deep on a recall stack. It just drives people crazy when you got
Not
16.
at our age.
When you got 16 trains. I know of only one guy, a fellow named Fred Balls, who retired from the energy plant up here at Aiken. He was a nuclear power plant engineer, and he could handle it. He could do all those things, not multi, just mega tasking. He could do all these things at one time and keep everything straight in his head. But that's not me. I'm a simple person. So, which is a universal throttle. It does not have programming capability. So it's ideal for use with Cub engineers and guests. They cannot screw up the system because they can't program anything. But you basically have that. You can wear it tethered so you can be free with your hands and just do whatever you need to do. and it's very traditional. It has a toggle switch for reversing direction, and you can do everything you need to do. Now, that's the throttle basis for Digitrax with the current product line. I'll reiterate, all of the older throttles, which we call legacy throttles, are still compatible with everything that was made in 1993. That's one of the things that Digitrax tried to engineer, backward compatibility, so that everything would keep working. All right, now, the nerve center of any DCC system is the command center, the command station. And Digitrax is now on the 4th generation, starting with the DT100, the DCS100, the DB100, the DB150, the DCS100, DCS200, DCS210, DCS210 plus, DCS240, DCS240 plus. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger as large clubs desire to run a lot of trains with a lot of operators. Now, there are people in this room that have gone all the way with DCS240s. Why? Because they got the bucks to do it, and because they want the best. So the DCS240 looks like this, and you see they're all very similar with the same grayish beige color on everything that's Digitrax. But there's the DCS210, the 210 plus, the DCS240, 240 plus. These systems are way bigger than what we need to run home-style model railroads. You're talking 120 to 240 locomotive addresses and throttles running simultaneously. It's just big. But we don't need to do that, so we keep it simple, all right? In addition to command stations, there are boosters. Boosters have no brain for coordinating train movements. All that's done in the command station. But if you need more power out on the layout, you break your layout into power districts and add boosters with separate power supplies, link them to the command station with local net cables, and you can have even more control. Now that's the product line as far as throttles and command stations. There's a whole lot more. I didn't even bother to try to bring decoders in here. There are just too many. Because there are decoders for G scale, O scale, HO scale, N scale, Z scale, and there are hundreds of them. And Digitrax manufactures all of them in their facility. But in addition to throttles, command stations, boosters, and decoders, there are other pieces of equipment that are very, very nice to have. The UR93, which is the transceiver for duplex radio control, looks very much like the LNWI, which is a local net Wi-Fi system. The LNWI supports 4 throttles. You can have more modules up to 16, 20 throttles. The UR93 has no practical upper limit for number of radio throttles. We like to say somewhere around 15 to 20 throttles per UR93 module. The UR93 replaces the venerable UR92, which is still functional, still repairable, but the UR93 is so much faster and so much more powerful that if you have a UR93 on a layout, it'll do all the work. The 92 just sits there waiting for its turn, but it never comes. So the UR93, that's current generation for duplex radio. Not everybody needs duplex radio. I like tethered control. It has no radio interference, no problems with that. All right, so that covers some of the wireless communication. In addition to wireless, there are auto reversers. The AR1, which is a nice device for handling reversing loops, turntables, and Ys. And then the next generation, the BXP-A1, which is solid state, and also provides detection and reporting. So if you're going to interface your system with computer, where you're doing detection, sensing presence of locomotives and cars, and you want to do that on your reversing section, the BXP-A1 would be the way to go. There are stationary decoders, there are signal decoders, and there are just all kinds of pieces of equipment. I brought just a couple. The PM74 replaces the PM42. I like the PM42. It's very basic, but it takes a while to program it because it has so many option switches. So you can change trip levels, current thresholds for tripping out, things of that sort. The SE74 is a signal decoder. It's half of the venerable SE8C, which could handle 16 signal heads. This one can handle 8. And then there's a DS74, and I did not bring one because mine is all rigged up with tortoise machines and test lights. I didn't want to dismantle it and bring it. But the DS74 is a stationary decoder for actuating switch machines. But now we're getting into devices that multitask. Not only can we do actuation with the PM74, we can do detection and transponding with it as well. Is anybody here not familiar with transponding? Okay. Transponding allows a decoder to squawk back to the command station and tell the command station where it is on the layout. If you have your layout broken into detection sections and you have transponding active in your locomotive will step progress as it moves around the layout to the command station. You interface that with a computer, then you can actually have on a display screen your layout schematic, and you can watch your trains march through the layout. It's kind of scary when a guy tells you on a layout briefing, you don't need to OS your trains here. I can see you. That's where the hobby goes for some people. We're not all geeks. I don't claim to be one. I'm just here. I'm just an agent of change. I'm here to help. That's what I do.
Right. Especially if you don't need the OS and your dispatcher's in another town completely.
That is correct. That is correct. Now, this afternoon, when you get out to the Utah Railway and the Clinchfield Northern, you will see traditionally dispatched layouts. Dispatcher contacts and keeps in touch with operators by radio, and he can direct all progress by radio. He doesn't have to see the trains because he lets the engineers OS their trains. Tell the dispatcher where you are, and the dispatcher tells the engineers where to move their trains, where to hold, and so forth. It makes a very nice interactive thing. But that's just one way of doing it, and there are many. Any questions? Yes?
It's fun to have somebody go to the source. Twisting wires for your power bus and basically RC stubbers at the end of your buses.
You don't have to do that with Digitrax.
Okay.
Some DCC systems require or request that you do so that you avoid picking up extraneous interference. Every open wire is a radio antenna, every one. So if you have open wires on a layout, that is wires that run out to someplace and stop, they're going to pick up radio signals from somewhere, either radio or electromagnetic interference from other things that are happening in our world. And there's a lot going on in our world. And sometimes that interferes with signal. Digitrax uses a multiple.
So question, I bought I think it was just, it's not a DT or my command station. I bought this in the 90s from a friend of mine who was
You
up
have a
there.
DCS 100.
You
I
have a
have a
DCS
DCS
100, yeah.
And it had those little clamps. You press it in and put the wire in, and then it
Yes.
would pull out.
The
pop
original
out.
DCS 100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had that upgraded by Digitrax, and happily they upgraded to the screwdriver fronts.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
Now I model ON 30, HO basically, a model in a 2-car garage. And occasionally I've noticed from the radio standpoint that I'll get some interference.
Yeah.
Is there, since this is such an old DCS unit, is there anything in the newer accessory lines that I could plug in that would give me better radio reception?
You're probably using simplex radio with a UR91. That would be my guess.
Yeah, I have duplex throttles.
We have duplex throttles,
Well-
we're using the UR92.
Yeah, which
Yes.
is not, 93 would be better.
The 93 is far more powerful than a 92. I
Okay.
recommend you jump to a UR93.
Okay,
You can locate it anywhere. It doesn't have antennae, it doesn't care about orientation. It just reaches out and touches everything.
so I don't have to worry about that little antenna on the
No,
DCS?
No.
Okay,
All right, the other thing you can do with a system is just make sure that you are on a radio channel that doesn't have much interference. You've got something like 25 channels available on the UR93, whereas the 92 only had 26. But you have 25 channels available, and usually the higher channels, from 10 and up, 25, 24, 22, those are really good quiet channels.
okay.
Because what we're finding is that cell phones and duplex radio operate on the same frequencies. So you bring a bunch of operators in with their cell phones, it's gonna get noisy.
Hmm.
So if you can move your duplex radio channel out of the range of your cell phones, it'll be much
And
easier.
that would be in the low 20s.
Low 20s,
Yeah.
probably the best area to go with.
Okay,
And of course, with the UR93, you can just dial up, you can change your channel easily, and then you can lock it out.
What's the